Those of you who are used to my content on any number of different platforms, you're probably not going to like what I have to say. Now, over the last week or so, the major debate amongst the Democrats and anybody that isn't a MAGA Republican has been on what the Senate should do and Senate Democrats should do in terms of shutting the government down or voting for cloture. And as the vote turned out, it turned out that Chuck Schumer decided, along with 9 other Democrats, to side with the Republicans and vote for cloture, which would allow the Republicans to pass the budget that the House had submitted using a continuing resolution approach that would only require 51 votes. Schumer is getting killed over his decision to lead the way in siding with Republicans. And here's where you're going to get mad at me. I agree with Schumer, and here's why. I think we all can agree that Democrats at that time are confronted with 2 giant crap sandwiches. Shutting down the government, which is going to cause a lot of pain, and early on, I was on the side of shutting down the government. Or voting for cloture, which would allow the House-constructed Republican budget to pass and be implemented. So when you're looking at both of those things, you have to pick the option that's going to minimize the damage as much as possible. And that's why I side with Schumer. Because think about this. If the government were shut down, Democrats would get blamed for it anyways. But it gives Republicans an out. And when I'm thinking about damage mitigation, and when I'm thinking about accountability and ownership, Republicans need to own all of this. And that's where I think the Schumer decision makes sense just on an optics perspective. Republicans have nowhere to go when it comes to pointing the finger for the consequences of the actions and the votes that they've taken. Another reason why I think Schumer's decision was the right one, think about what's going on with the rampant illegality that is coming out of the executive branch of the government. We are all expecting Republicans in the House or the Senate or both to show some spine. As many of us have mentioned, you're never going to lose money if you bet on the Republicans to do the wrong thing. And they've consistently rubber stamped anything that Trump has wanted to do. And this is where the government shutdown would have been a death blow, I believe, to everything that's going on. The only branch of government that is actually acting as a roadblock to the Trump agenda is the Judiciary. So far, just in February alone, there were 15 injunctions that were placed that put a stop to all the different things that Trump wanted to do. It's gotten so bad that Caroline Leavitt, the White House spokesperson, took time out of her day of spackling on all of that makeup to note that the amount of injunctions has far exceeded anything that happened during the entire Biden administration. And that's not the flux that she thinks it is. The only reason injunctions happen is if you're breaking the law, and this gives you an idea of the criminality that's in process. So the fact that Leavitt is mentioning that the lower courts are impeding the agenda, completely ignoring any element of the Constitution, tells you why voting for cloture was the right decision. Because if the government shuts down, you're looking at a prolonged shutdown that allows the executive to operate unimpeded because the courts are only going to stay in operation for a certain amount of time. So that takes the complete guardrails off. So when we're thinking about the least worst decision that you can make, voting for cloture was that least worst decision because the only branch of government that is acting as a guardrail against this administration remains functioning and can still play the role of interference as the dictator-in-chief tries to push through what he wants to push through. I agree, neither option is ideal, but we're not in ideal times, and we have to be strategic about it. And the last thing that I'll say on this, what tipped me over the edge was the voicemails from MAGA Republicans left on Tom Tillis's voicemail. Tom Tillis is a Republican out of North Carolina, and all the red hats have taken it upon themselves to leave voicemails on his Senate office voicemail, threatening all sorts of stuff. So if the red hats are mad at that level, it's not going to take much more for them to get mobilized and start pushing the issue. And that's what needs to happen in order for any of this to stop, is that the red hats have to get irritated enough and angry enough at what's going on to take action. So that is why the decision from Schumer to vote for Cloture, along with the 9 Democrats that went along with him, was the right decision when we're thinking about the big picture.